Naomi Ellison was 33 years old when her husband told her, in front of his own assistant, that she was always a little embarrassing in these rooms. Trent didn't lower his voice. He didn't think he needed to. He'd already decided she wasn't coming to the gala that would make his career. What he didn't know was that the dress fitting on Naomi's calendar that same afternoon was for a one-of-a-kind gown worth $2 million, commissioned through the foundation that bears her family's name. That evening, walking past his office, Naomi heard him on the phone, confirming dinner reservations under a fake name, calling the gala Our Night, talking to a woman who knew exactly whose husband she was sleeping with. Naomi didn't make a sound. She didn't open the door. She just stood there, listening to a year of lies fall into place, one reservation at a time. Trent had no idea the woman he'd called embarrassing already knew everything. And in that quiet hallway, Naomi made a decision that would change both their lives completely. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The wire transfer cleared at 7:04 a.m. Naomi watched the confirmation number populate across the screen, 14 digits, clean and final, and felt nothing more than the quiet satisfaction of a task completed. $4.2 million, moved from a subsidiary account to a holdings fund in Luxembourg. Routine. She made a small note in the margin of her leather planner, capped her pen, and closed the laptop in one smooth motion. She heard Trent's footsteps on the stairs. By the time he pushed open the kitchen door, she was standing at the counter pouring coffee, the laptop sitting dark and unremarkable beside the fruit bowl, just another household object. A grocery list was propped against it. She had put the list there on purpose. "Morning," she said. Trent didn't answer right away. He was already on his phone. He moved through the kitchen the way he always did in the mornings before something important, fast and distracted, like the room was an obstacle between him and somewhere else. He was still in his undershirt, his good pants already on, a sure sign his mind had started the day without his body. Naomi set his coffee on the counter near him and stepped back. He was a handsome man. She had always thought so. Broad through the shoulders, sharp jaw, the kind of easy confidence that read well in a room. He knew how to stand. He knew how to smile at the right moment. Those things had mattered to her once, and some distant, quieter part of her supposed they still did, even now. He hung up the phone and reached for the coffee without looking at her. "Did the dry cleaning come back?" he asked. "Yesterday. It's in the closet. The charcoal suit, not the navy." "I know, Trent." He looked up then, just briefly, and gave her a short nod. Not thanks, just acknowledgement that the information was received. The Briggs Foundation Gala was that evening. Naomi had known about it for 3 months. She knew Walter Briggs hosted it every year at the Alderton, 12 floors up, a ballroom that smelled like old money and fresh flowers, and she knew what it meant to Trent. The Briggs contract was the thing he talked about the way other men talked about retirement, like a finish line, like proof. He had spent 6 weeks arranging introductions, calling in favors, having his assistant, Caleb, manage his calendar like a military operation. He wanted to be seen as serious, established, the kind of man Briggs built things with, the kind of man who had the right wife on his arm. That last part was where Naomi became a problem. She knew this without being told. She had known it for years, in the small ways it surfaced. A look when she wore flats instead of heels. A pause before he introduced her at dinners. The particular tone he used when he said she works in finance, and then moved on quickly before anyone could ask a follow-up. She had let him do it. Every time. She had smoothed herself down into something easier for him to carry, and she had told herself it was a choice, and most days she believed it. Caleb called at 8:30. Trent took it in the kitchen, pacing the length of the island the way he did when he was performing competence for an audience of 1. Naomi was at the table with her coffee. She didn't leave. "I'm not worried about the remarks. The remarks are fine," Trent said. "I need the table placement confirmed. If we're not within 3 seats of Briggs during dinner, the whole evening loses—" He stopped. Listened. His jaw shifted. "What do you mean she's bringing a guest?" He turned slightly away from Naomi. Not all the way, just enough. "That's going to look strange, Caleb. It's going to look like I couldn't manage my own—" "Yes, Yes, I know. A pause. He rubbed the back of his neck. Listen, it might be cleaner to... Naomi tends to be a little... You know how she is in those rooms. She doesn't always... He exhaled through his nose. Let's just see how the morning goes. He hung up and turned around. Naomi was looking at her coffee cup. That was Caleb, he said. I know. He studied her for a moment with the particular look of a man deciding how honest to be. Then he straightened up and made the decision. Naomi, his voice had gone careful, I think it might actually be better if you sat this one out tonight. She looked up. These rooms, he gestured vaguely. You're always a little embarrassing in these rooms. It's not a criticism, it's just not your world. And tonight matters. She held his gaze for a long, still moment. Then she nodded once, slowly, and looked back down at her cup. Trent took that as agreement. He picked up his phone again and went upstairs. Her fitting was at 2:00, in a private studio on the 4th floor of a building that didn't have a sign out front. The gown was white, hand-embroidered, every thread placed by a single artisan over 4 months, working from a design commissioned through the Ellison Family Foundation. The price tag, had there been one, would have read $2 million. Naomi stood very still in front of the mirror while the seamstress made the final adjustments at the hem. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just looked at herself, clearly, for the first time in a long time. She was home by 4. The house was quiet when she walked in. She slipped off her shoes at the door out of habit, a small thing she had done for years without thinking, and set her bag on the bench in the entryway. From upstairs came the low, even sound of a voice. Trent's office door was open a crack. She wasn't trying to listen. She was simply there, in the hallway, the sound reaching her before she had made any decision about it. Under Hartwell, yes. Hartwell like the street. A short laugh. No, that's the whole point. She stopped moving. She recognized the tone immediately. Not the words, the tone. Easy. Warm in a way that he hadn't been with her in longer than she could pin down. Like a man who was comfortable. Like a man who had nothing to manage. You're going to love the room. A pause while he listened. I told you, tonight's ours. A woman's voice came through the phone, faint but clear in the stillness of the house. Our night. I've been looking forward to this one. You should be, Trent said. Then, quieter, with a smile she could hear. No more sitting next to Naomi while she nods along and says nothing all evening. The woman on the other end laughed. It was a comfortable laugh, not surprised, not hesitant. The laugh of someone already familiar with the joke. Poor thing, the voice said. Does she even know what room she's in? She barely knows what day it is. He said it lightly, carelessly, the way you say something you've said enough times it no longer feels cruel. Naomi stood in the hallway and let the words land. She didn't move. She didn't make a sound. She breathed in slowly through her nose, and she let the air out just as slowly. And she stood very still, the way she had stood in front of the mirror that afternoon. She listened until he wrapped up the call with a low, "Can't wait," and the sound of his chair shifting. Then she moved, quietly, evenly, back down the hall and into the kitchen before he opened the door. She heard him come downstairs 20 minutes later, heard the garage door open and close. She waited another 2 minutes, then she went upstairs. His office smelled like his cologne, the good one he kept for important nights. His laptop was closed, but his calendar was synced to the shared household tablet he'd given her 2 years ago to manage their schedules. He had never once considered that she might actually look at it. She sat down at his desk and opened it. She started at the beginning of the previous year and worked forward, methodically, the way she read financial filings, looking for patterns. Not for proof of anything specific, just for the shape of things. The pattern revealed itself within 10 minutes. Hotel charges on his business card, which she had limited access to through their joint account management software. They weren't hidden. They were categorized under client entertainment, the way a man categorizes something he doesn't think anyone will question. The Meridian on 54th, the Langford, a boutique property in the meatpacking district she had to look up because she didn't recognize the name. 31 times over 14 months. The client dinners were there too, flagged in his calendar with first names only. V. Dinner. Then later, not even that. Just a colored block, no label at all, but always on the same nights. She opened her own email. 6 months ago, Trent had forwarded her a message, forwarded carelessly, the way he forwarded things he considered administrative, from a junior associate at his firm, confirming arrangements for a company event Naomi had agreed to attend and then quietly bowed out of. The associate's name was at the bottom of the chain, Vivian Cole, Associate, Ashford Development Group. Naomi pulled up the email now and read back through the thread. Vivian had confirmed 2 dinner reservations in that same chain, one for the company event, one for a separate dinner the same week, marked as a client meeting. The timestamp on the second reservation matched a colored block in Trent's calendar from that month exactly. She sat with that for a moment. Then she checked the records on his second phone. She hadn't known about the second phone for certain until now, but she had noticed it 3 months ago, glimpsed it in the pocket of his gym bag before he zipped it shut, and she had filed the observation away the way she filed everything she wasn't ready to use yet. His carrier account was linked to the same household login. He had set it up that way himself, 2 years ago. She found the second line in under a minute. She didn't read the messages. She didn't need to. She took photographs of each screen with her own phone, quiet and precise, and then she put the tablet back exactly where she had found it, at the same angle, with the same application open. She went to the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, she didn't do anything at all. Then she picked up her phone and called Renata. Her aunt answered on the second ring. "I need help," Naomi said. Her voice was even. "Not the kind you give at funerals. The other kind." The Briggs Foundation Gala was held at the Caldwell, a converted Beaux Art bank building in Midtown that still had its original vaulted ceilings and marble floors, the kind of room that made people stand up straighter the moment they walked in. Trent walked in like he owned the floor. He had on his charcoal suit, the Italian one he kept dry cleaned between wearings and never let touch the back of a chair. His shoes caught the light. His hair was just right. And on his arm was Vivian Cole, in a deep burgundy dress that fit like it had been made for the occasion. Because it had. He had paid for it 3 weeks ago, charged under client gifting, same as the hotel rooms. She was striking. Tall, polished, with the kind of easy confidence that came from knowing exactly how she looked when she walked into a room. She smiled at the right people and laughed at the right moments and kept her hand lightly on Trent's arm like it belonged there. He felt good. He felt, for the first time in a long time, like the most impressive version of himself. "Walter?" He extended his hand the moment he spotted Briggs near the welcome reception, moving toward him with the practiced ease of a man rehearsing his own highlight reel. "What a night! The room looks extraordinary." Walter Briggs was a tall man with white hair and the kind of steady gaze that made people feel they were being evaluated even during small talk. He shook Trent's hand once, firmly. "Trent," he smiled, the polite kind. "Glad you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it." Trent touched Vivian's elbow. "This is Vivian Cole. She's been invaluable to my team this year." Vivian smiled and extended her hand. "Mr. Briggs, it's a genuine pleasure. I've followed the Foundation's development work for some time. I'd love to find a moment this evening to talk about the advisory track you're building out." Briggs accepted the handshake. His expression was courteous but unreadable. "We can certainly talk." Trent smiled. This was exactly how tonight was supposed to go. Vivian moved through the room with precision. She had a mental list: who to meet, what to say, which conversations to let Trent lead, and which ones to steer herself. The Foundation was the real prize, not Trent's contract. Not Trent. The Foundation's advisory pipeline was the kind of placement that moved a career from promising to established, and she intended to be considered for it before the night was over. She smiled. She circulated. She collected business cards and left impressions. She was midway through a conversation with two of Briggs's Foundation board members when she heard the room change. It wasn't loud. It was more like a shift in pressure, the way a room feels when something has entered it that rearranges the air. Heads turned near the main entrance. A woman from the fashion press said something to the man beside her and reached for her phone. Someone nearby said a name Vivian didn't catch. She turned to look. The woman at the entrance wore white, not the soft white of something simple. This was different. The gown was floor-length, hand-embroidered from the waist down in a pattern that caught the chandelier light the way water catches sunlight. Moving, alive, impossible to look away from. It had taken 6 months to make. The embroidery alone had required 3 artisans. The total commission was the kind of number that didn't appear in fashion magazines because the people who wore things like this didn't need press. The woman wearing it was 33 years old, with her dark hair pulled back cleanly from her face, and she moved through the entrance with the calm of someone who had never once needed a room's approval. Walter Briggs was already crossing the floor toward her. "Naomi." He took both her hands and smiled at her with a warmth that was completely different from the polite version he had offered Trent 20 minutes ago. "You look extraordinary. We are so grateful you're here tonight." "Walter," Naomi smiled, genuine, quiet. "Congratulations on the new partnership announcement. It's exactly what the Foundation needed. It wouldn't have happened without your family's contribution, and you know it." He lowered his voice just slightly, the way you speak with people whose history with you is too long for a crowded room to hold. "Come, there are people who've been hoping to meet you." The press photographer near the entrance had already taken 3 shots. 2 board members were moving toward her. Someone from the city's Arts Council touched her arm as she passed and said her name like it was familiar to him, because it was. Vivian stood very still. She watched the room reorganize itself around a woman she had never seen before. A woman she had joked about by name on a phone call just days ago. A woman she had called "poor thing" without a single moment of hesitation. She didn't understand what she was seeing. Not yet, but something cold and certain was starting to settle in her chest. Across the room, Trent had gone pale. He was staring at his wife, at the dress, at Briggs's hands holding hers, at the photographer, at the board members, and the color was draining from his face in real time. His mouth was slightly open, his glass was still in his hand, but he had forgotten it was there. Naomi crossed the room slowly. She stopped in front of them both. She looked at Trent first, then at Vivian, then back at Trent. Her expression was composed. Perfectly, completely composed. "You wanted me to sit this one out," she said. Her voice was quiet and even. "I funded the seat you're sitting in." Then she turned and walked away, back toward Briggs and the board members waiting for her, and she did not look back. The Ellison Holt Capital offices sat on the 31st floor of a glass tower on Park Avenue, quiet and unassuming from the outside. No oversized logo on the lobby directory, no flashy reception desk, just clean lines, dark wood, and the kind of stillness that came from people who had nothing to prove. Naomi arrived at 7:15. The city was still gray outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the morning light thin and flat over the skyline. She set her coffee on the conference table, hung her coat, and sat down. She had slept 4 hours. She felt completely clear. Renata arrived at 7:30, which was early for her and meant she had things to say. She was 61 years old, sharp-faced and precise in a charcoal blazer, with reading glasses pushed up on her head and a leather folder under her arm. She had been the family firm's general counsel for over 2 decades. She had known Naomi since Naomi was 9 years old and had watched, with quiet and mounting frustration, as her niece spent 6 years of marriage making herself smaller to fit inside someone else's idea of normal. She set the folder on the table and sat across from Naomi. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm fine," Naomi said. "What do you have?" Renata looked at her for a moment. Then she opened the folder. "The Gala was only part of it," she said. "I had Marcus pull the full portfolio breakdown last night after you called me. I wanted to see everything before we sat down." Naomi wrapped both hands around her coffee cup and waited. "You know the Meridian Growth Fund," Renata said. It wasn't a question. "The mid-sized position your grandfather took in it about 12 years ago? It's been quiet for a long time, mostly commercial real estate debt, smaller development projects." "I know it," Naomi said. "Ashford Development Group has been drawing from it." Renata slid a single page across the table. "For 11 months. Structured as a private credit facility, routed through a holding company. It was buried well enough that it didn't surface in the standard quarterly review. Marcus only caught it because he was specifically looking." Naomi looked at the page. The numbers were there in plain black type. Loan disbursements, dates, the name of the holding company, which was 2 layers removed from Ashford Development, but led directly there if you followed the chain. She sat with it for a moment. 11 months. The same window as the hotel receipts, the second phone, the recurring dinners with Vivian. The same 11 months during which Trent had been telling her, that his firm was on the rise because of his instincts, his relationships, his work. Her money. Her grandfather's money. Funding the offices, the projects, the reputation that had earned Trent a seat at Walter Briggs's table. And the dress he had handed Vivian. "He doesn't know," Naomi said. It was not a question either. "He doesn't know," Renata confirmed. "The structure was set up before his firm ever drew from it. He would have seen a private lender with a clean track record, nothing to connect it back to you." Naomi set the page down flat on the table. She did not grip the edge of the table. She did not close her eyes. She breathed in once, steadily, and let the full weight of it land without flinching away from it. Then she looked at Renata. "I want complete documentation," she said. "Every disbursement, every loan record, the full chain from Meridian to the holding company to his firm. Financing agreements, draw schedules, correspondence, all of it." Renata was already writing. "I also want everything from the discovery, the calendar records, the hotel charges, the phone, anything that connects the affair to business activity, expenses he ran through client accounts, any overlap between Vivian Cole and firm transactions." "That'll take a few days to compile cleanly." "Then take a few days," Naomi said. "I'm not moving until the record is complete. I don't want to confront anything. I want to document everything. There's a difference." Renata looked up from her notes. Something in her expression shifted. Not surprise exactly, but recognition. The kind of look she gave when Naomi reminded her, in a specific way, of the man who had built this firm from nothing. "Your grandfather would have done it exactly this way," she said. Naomi didn't respond to that. She picked up the page from the table, looked at it one more time, and set it back in the folder. "Let me know when Marcus has the full pull ready," she said. She was home by 6. She had barely closed the front door behind her when she heard Trent's footsteps from the direction of the living room, fast and deliberate, the specific cadence of someone who had been waiting and had run out of patience for it. He appeared in the hallway. His jacket was off, his sleeves pushed up, his jaw set tight. He had the look of a man who had spent the day building himself up to something. "We need to talk," he said. "Right now. Why didn't you tell me? About any of it?" His voice was sharp, wound through with something that sounded almost like accusation. "The money, the foundation, all of it. Why didn't you tell me who you actually are?" Naomi set her bag down on the hall table. She took off her coat. She hung it up. She did all of this slowly, without rushing, while Trent stood in the hallway with his jaw tight and his arms crossed and his eyes fixed on her like she owed him an answer she had not yet given. Then she walked past him into the living room and sat down on the sofa. He followed her. Of course he did. "I'm talking to you," he said. "I heard you," she said. He stopped in the middle of the room. He was still wearing his work clothes, the expensive shirt, the watch he polished on weekends. He looked like a man who had rehearsed what he was going to say and was now slightly off script because she wasn't reacting the way he had planned. "You let me believe we were in the same position," he said. "For 6 years, Naomi. 6 years. I thought we were building something together. I thought you were—" He stopped, recalibrated. Do you understand how humiliating it was? Walking into that room last night and realizing my own wife had been hiding who she was from me? That everyone in that room knew something I didn't? She looked at him. She said nothing. That's not a marriage, he said, his voice rising. That's a performance. That's you deciding on your own that I didn't deserve to know the truth. How is that different from lying? He was good at this. She had forgotten how good he was at it. The way he could take any situation, no matter how clearly it pointed back at him, and find an angle from which he was the one who had been wronged. His voice had just the right amount of hurt in it, his posture just the right amount of wounded dignity. She watched him work through it. You have nothing to say for yourself? He said. I'm listening, she said. Keep going. He blinked. That wasn't the response he wanted, and they both knew it. He had come in here ready for tears or anger or justification, some kind of emotional reaction he could push against. Her stillness left him nothing to hold on to. He ran a hand through his hair. I deserved to know, he said, quieter now. That's all I'm saying. Whatever else is going on, I deserve to know who I married. Naomi nodded once, slowly. Okay, she said. Okay? He stared at her. That's it? You said what you had to say, she said. I heard you. He stood there for another moment. Then he picked up his jacket from the back of the armchair and left the room. A few seconds later, she heard the sound of the bedroom door closing. She sat in the quiet. She did not feel uncertain. She did not feel guilty. She felt the same thing she had felt all morning in that conference room on the 31st floor. A specific, clean kind of focus, like a lens pulling everything into sharp detail. He had not mentioned Vivian once. 3 days passed. Trent moved carefully around the house, watching her in a way he probably thought was subtle, measuring her mood, looking for an opening. He brought home dinner one night, the good Thai place she liked, and set the containers out on the counter like a peace offering, and she thanked him pleasantly and ate and did not say anything that gave him anything at all. She went to the office. She reviewed documents with Renata. She waited. On the 4th day, Priya called. She went to Briggs, Priya said, without preamble. She was using her journalist voice, the one stripped of warmth and aimed only at facts. Vivian Cole walked into the Briggs Foundation's development office on Wednesday afternoon. No appointment. She pitched herself for a paid advisory role on the Hargrove District project, the big mixed-use development Briggs is moving forward with next quarter. Naomi was standing at her kitchen counter with a mug of tea. She set it down. How do you know this? Mara Voss, Priya said. She handles scheduling for the Foundation's project team. We worked together on the Harbor event 2 years ago. She called me because she thought the pitch felt off. She said the woman knew things, specific numbers, zoning details, contractor relationships, that you wouldn't have unless you were working inside the deal. But Vivian Cole isn't. She's a junior associate at a mid-sized development firm. She shouldn't have had any of that. Naomi said nothing. She picked her mug back up. Naomi. I heard you. She's using information from Trent's firm to try to build her own seat at the table, Priya said. That's not just bold, that's a problem. It is, Naomi agreed. There was a short silence on the line. I'm not ready to say exactly what kind of problem yet, Priya said. I need to look at what she actually submitted to the Foundation. Mara held on to a copy, but I need another day to go through it carefully before I can tell you what we're actually looking at. Take the day, Naomi said. You're not worried? Naomi looked out the window at the street below. Gray afternoon light, a woman walking a dog. Everything ordinary and calm. No, she said. I'm not worried. The cafe was small and tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookshop on a street nobody important ever walked down. That was why Naomi liked it. The tables were close together, but on a Wednesday morning in November, most of them were empty. Priya was already there when Naomi arrived. She had taken the corner table, the one with its back to the wall, and she had spread papers across the surface in a careful arrangement. Not messy, not rushed, but sorted by type. The kind of layout you made when you wanted to present a case, not just share information. Naomi sat down. She ordered tea from the woman who came to the table. She looked at the papers, but did not reach for them yet. "Start from the beginning," she said. Priya pressed her palms flat against the table. She was wearing the same expression she wore when she filed a story she knew was going to cause serious trouble for someone. Resolved, but not comfortable with it. "The foundation pitch first," she said. She slid a stapled set of pages across the table. "These are the materials Vivian submitted to Briggs's project team on Wednesday. Mara scanned them before she locked the file." Naomi picked them up. The document was 12 pages. Cleanly formatted, it read like the work of someone who knew how to present well, and who knew far too much for someone in her position. Contractor names, zoning variance details, a cost estimate broken down by project phase that was accurate to within 3% of Trent's internal numbers. "Those figures," Naomi said without looking up. "Trent's team." "His firm's project files," Priya said. "I cross-referenced what she submitted against the RFP documents that Briggs's foundation made public, and there's a clean line. Everything in the public documents she could have found on her own. But these—" She reached over and tapped a specific page, a breakdown of subcontractor relationships and cost-sharing agreements. "These aren't public. These came from inside Trent's firm. Client-facing materials, marked confidential." Naomi set the pages down. She thought about Vivian at the Gala, the practiced ease of her, the way she had moved through that room like she had already decided it belonged to her. She had not just bet on Trent, she had stolen from him to hedge that bet, and she had used what she stole to try to build a position that did not depend on him at all. She had been running her own play the whole time, using the affair as a ladder and the confidential files as the rungs. "She's not loyal to him," Naomi said quietly. "She never was." "No," Priya said. "She was loyal to herself. Trent was just useful." Naomi nodded. Then she said, "The second thing." Priya's expression shifted. Not softer, harder actually around the eyes. She reached for a different document. A single page, this one, with the header of a financial institution Naomi recognized as the bank that held one of their joint marital accounts. She did not take it from Priya right away. She looked at it from across the table first. "He applied for a personal loan," Priya said. $60,000, against joint assets, the Callaway Street account. You're listed as a co-applicant." "I never applied for anything." "No," Priya said. "You didn't." She slid the page across. Naomi looked at the signature line. Her own name was printed beneath it in the clean typeface of a filled form. Above it, in ink, was a signature. It was close. It was actually fairly close, but it was not hers. She had signed her name thousands of times, on wire authorizations, on foundation documents, on legal filings her grandfather had walked her through before she was old enough to fully understand what she was signing. She knew every angle of the letters, the way the N leaned slightly forward, the way the last stroke of the I in Ellison curled up, not down. This did not do any of those things. "The loan was approved," Priya said, 6 weeks ago. "The funds went into an account I can't trace from what I have, but the application lists a purpose." She reached over and pointed to a line near the top of the page. "Purpose of loan, personal travel and accommodations." Naomi set the page down on the table. She pressed 2 fingers against the corner of it and looked at it for a moment. The cafe was quiet around her. Somewhere behind her, a machine steamed milk. A door opened and let in a brief rush of cold air and then closed again. She had known he was capable of careless cruelty. She had known he was capable of justifying almost anything to protect his own image. But this was different. This was not cruelty or ego. This was a crime. She picked up her phone and called Renata. 2 rings. "Are you at the office?" Naomi said. Yes, Renata said. Don't leave, Naomi said. Priya and I are coming to you. She looked up at Priya across the table, at the documents spread between them like evidence of a life she was done managing quietly. It's time to stop watching, she said. I need both of you to help me set up one final meeting with Trent. The Ellison Holt Capital offices sat on the 14th floor of a glass building on Meridian Avenue. The lobby downstairs had marble floors and a security desk and a revolving door that moved slowly, like it had all the time in the world. The offices above were quiet and precise. Clean lines, pale wood, nothing loud about any of it. Naomi had always liked that. Quiet things could hold a lot of weight. She arrived first, at 7 in the morning, 2 days after the cafe. She made coffee in the small kitchen off the main hallway and brought 2 extra mugs to the conference room without being asked. She set them on the long table beside the stack of folders Renata had prepared. Then she sat down and waited. Renata arrived at 7:15. She set her bag on a chair, looked at the folders, and said nothing. She had already reviewed everything twice. She did not need to review it again. Priya came in at 7:30 with a paper bag of pastries nobody would eat and her laptop already open, screen full of tabs. I've got it all organized, Priya said, pulling out a chair across from Naomi. 3 clean sections. Naomi nodded. Walk us through it. Priya turned the laptop so the other 2 could see, and then she went through it the way she went through everything, methodically, without drama, just the facts in sequence. The first section was the financing trail. 12 months of records showing how Trent's development firm had drawn operating capital from a mid-size real estate fund, the same fund in which Naomi's family office held a controlling stake. The connection was not obvious if you were not looking for it. It moved through 2 intermediary vehicles, but once you traced it, it was clean and documented and impossible to argue with. Trent had been building his career on her money. He just had not known whose money it was. The second section was Vivian's pitch materials. Priya had organized them side by side with the confidential project files from Trent's firm. The originals on the right, the lifted details embedded in Vivian's foundation submission on the left. The match was unmistakable. Page references, phrase-by-phrase comparisons. Priya had done the kind of work that left no room for a reasonable alternative explanation. The third section was the loan document. Renata opened that folder herself. She set it flat on the table and smoothed it with her palm like she was pressing down something she wanted to stay in place. Forges a felony, she said. She did not say it with heat. She said it the way she said everything in this room, evenly, as a fact, as a thing that was simply true and needed to be named. A competent handwriting examiner will confirm it in under an hour. The bank has the original on file. There is no version of this where he walks away from it. Naomi looked at the page, at her name, signed in someone else's hand. I know, she said. She pulled the folder toward her and closed it. Then she looked at Priya. The Foundation Council, she said. Briggs's office. Have you made contact? I have a direct line through Mara, Priya said. I can frame it as due diligence, a heads up that materials submitted in a recent advisory pitch may contain proprietary information from a third-party firm. No names attached on my end, no accusation, just the documentation, sent through the right channel so they can draw their own conclusions. Through the right channel, Naomi repeated, not as a complaint, not as an attack, as information they would want to have. Exactly, Priya said. Naomi sat with that for a moment. She did not want spectacle. She had never wanted spectacle. What she wanted was for every consequence to arrive through the proper door, authorized and documented and impossible to dismiss as emotional or personal or petty. She wanted the architecture of it to be clean. Do it today, she said, before I call Trent. Priya nodded and reached for her phone. Renata was already writing something on a yellow legal pad in her precise, small handwriting. Notes for herself. Procedure for the meeting. She had a particular way of preparing for confrontations, not by anticipating what the other person would say, but by making sure there was no possible response that had not already been accounted for. Naomi stood and walked to the window. 14 floors down, Meridian Avenue was filling with the ordinary business of a Thursday morning. People with coffee cups, a delivery truck idling at the curb, a woman in a red coat walking fast, head down against the November wind. She took her phone from her pocket. Trent picked up on the second ring. "Naomi?" His voice was careful, measured, the particular tone he used when he was trying to read a situation before committing to a position in it. "I want to settle things quietly," she said. "A private meeting. My firm's offices, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. A pause. She could hear him recalibrating. She could almost feel him deciding that this was manageable, that she was reaching out because she needed something from him, that this was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to get back in front of her and steer the conversation somewhere he could control. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, okay. 9 o'clock works." "Good," she said. "I'll send the address." She ended the call and looked at her phone for a moment. Then she set it face down on the table and turned back to Renata and Priya. "He confirmed," she said. 9 o'clock tomorrow." Trent stepped out of the elevator at 8:58. He was dressed well. Dark suit, no tie, the kind of studied casual that said he had thought about it without wanting to look like he had. He had his phone in his hand and a look on his face that Naomi had seen before, the one he wore when he was walking into a room he believed he already understood. The receptionist led him down the hallway toward the main conference room. He was still looking at his phone when she opened the door. He stopped. The room was not empty. Renata sat to the left of the head of the table, a closed folder in front of her, hands folded on top of it. Across from her sat 3 men Trent recognized immediately, the board members from his own firm, men who had shaken his hand at quarterly reviews and signed off on his budgets and nodded along to his pitches. They were not nodding now. They sat with the particular stillness of people who had already been told things they could not unknow. And at the far end of the table, beside a man Trent had spent the better part of a year trying to impress, sat Walter Briggs. Trent's hand tightened around his phone. Naomi was standing near the window. She was wearing a plain gray blazer and dark trousers, no jewelry except small gold studs. She looked, as she almost always looked, like someone who did not need the room to notice her. The room had noticed her anyway. "Trent," she said. "Sit down." He did not move right away. He looked around the table once more, like he was checking whether this was actually happening, and then he pulled out the nearest chair and sat. Nobody offered him coffee. Naomi moved to the head of the table. She did not hurry. "I asked everyone here," she said, "because what I have to share concerns everyone in this room. It's cleaner this way." She opened the folder in front of her. Not Renata's, her own, and slid a document across the table to the board members. "For the past 12 months, Trent's firm has drawn operating capital from the Meridian Growth Partners Fund. I want to make sure everyone here has seen the ownership structure of that fund." One of the board members, Harlan, the oldest one, the one who had always seemed faintly skeptical of Trent, leaned forward and looked at the page. His expression did not change, but he set the page flat and did not look up again. "My family office holds a controlling stake," Naomi said simply, "which means the firm Trent has been running and the career he's been building has been financed, in part, by me." She paused. "He didn't know that, but I thought his board should." The silence that followed was the kind that had weight to it. Trent opened his mouth. "Naomi, I'm not finished," she said, not sharply, just clearly. She pulled a second document from the folder and set it on the table in front of him. He looked down at it. He went very still. It was the loan application, his own firm's letterhead, and at the bottom, in handwriting that was almost hers but not quite, the signature. "That is my name," Naomi said. "That is not my signature." Briggs, who had said nothing since Trent walked in, straightened in his chair. He looked at the document from where he sat. Then he looked at Trent. "Is that your filing?" Briggs asked. Trent said nothing. "Trent?" Briggs's voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was final. "Is that your filing?" There's context to that document that—" "There is no context," Renata said, "that applies to a forged signature on a loan application. That is a felony, and it is documented." Briggs looked at the page one more time. Then they sat back. "We're done," he said, not to the room, to Trent. "The contract is withdrawn, effective today. I don't do business with people whose judgment looks like this." Trent's jaw tightened. A muscle moved under his cheek, but he did not speak. The side door opened 10 minutes later. Vivian walked in with the particular confidence of someone who had been told only that a meeting had been requested by the Foundation. She was dressed sharply, portfolio under her arm, and she scanned the room quickly the way she always did, assessing, calculating, before her eyes found Naomi. Something shifted in her face. Fast. Gone almost before it landed. The man beside Briggs, Foundation counsel, silver-haired, unhurried, set a thin folder on the table in front of the empty chair across from him. "Ms. Cole," he said, "please sit." She sat. "We've reviewed the materials you submitted in your advisory pitch," he said. "Specifically, pages 4 through 11. He opened the folder and turned it to face her. "These figures and this project language were pulled from confidential client files held by a private firm with which you were employed. That is not a gray area." Vivian looked at the page. Her portfolio stayed closed on the table in front of her. "The Foundation is withdrawing your advisory candidacy," he said, "and I believe your firm's managing partner has already been contacted through proper compliance channels." She looked up then, not at the counsel, at Trent. Whatever she had expected him to do, whatever backup she had assumed he would provide, was not there. He was staring at the table. Vivian closed her eyes for a single breath. Then she stood, picked up her portfolio, and walked out without a word. The door clicked shut behind her. The board members exchanged a glance across the table, quick and uneasy, the kind that happened when men who had believed in someone were quietly revising everything they thought they knew. Trent sat in his chair. He did not stand. He did not speak. He looked like a man who had just watched the floor finish dropping out beneath him, and realized, too late, that he had built it himself. The conference room emptied slowly. Briggs left first, shaking Naomi's hand at the door with the quiet warmth of a man who had never doubted her. The board members filed out after him, each one offering Trent a look that was not quite pity and not quite disgust, but somewhere in the middle. The look men give when they are deciding how much distance to put between themselves and a sinking thing. Renata was the last to leave. She paused at the door, looked at Naomi once, and gave a small nod. That was all. It was enough. Trent was still sitting when the room went quiet. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, Renata had forwarded the file breach documentation to the managing partner at Trent's firm through the firm's own compliance intake portal. She did not call. She did not add a personal note. She attached the relevant pages, cited the applicable professional conduct code in a single, clean sentence, and sent it. The response came in 40 minutes. She read it, set her phone face down on her desk, and went back to work. Vivian's keycard stopped working at 3:17. She was in the elevator when it happened. She found out at the lobby turnstile, the way people always found out, which was the worst possible way. The security guard was apologetic and careful, and kept his eyes slightly above her head. Her personal items from the office would be boxed and couriered to her home address. HR would send paperwork by end of day. She stood on the sidewalk outside the building for a moment, portfolio still under her arm, and called Trent. He answered on the third ring. "They let me go," she said. He was quiet. "Trent." "I heard you." "That's all you have?" Her voice was flat, not broken, flat, which was worse. "I don't know what you want me to say, Vivian." "I don't want you to say anything." She looked up at the building, then back down at the street. "I want you to be honest with yourself about what I was actually doing here, because it was never about you." "I know that." She almost laughed. "No, you don't. You still think this was a relationship." She shifted her portfolio to her other arm. "It was a bet, and you lost. So I'm done." She hung up. Trent stood in the parking structure of his own firm's building, phone in hand, the call already gone, and said nothing to nobody. Naomi had asked him to come back to the house at 6. She was already there when he arrived. No candles, no set table, no performance of domesticity. She was sitting in the armchair nearest the window, the one she had always preferred, with a glass of water on the side table and a manila envelope in her lap. She was wearing the same gray blazer from that morning. Trent sat on the couch across from her. He looked like a man who had not eaten since the night before. "Vivian's done with you," Naomi said. It was not a question. "Yes," she nodded slowly. "I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it." She waited until he looked at her. "You spent 6 years trying to be the most impressive person in every room, and you married someone who could have made every one of those rooms irrelevant. You had access to something that would have made you untouchable." She paused. "And you threw it away so you could feel like the important one." Trent's throat moved. "Naomi." "I'm not angry," she said, and she meant it. Her voice was steady and even and completely without heat. "I'm just finished." She set the manila envelope on the coffee table between them and slid it toward him. "Divorce filing," she said. "Renata drafted it. The forged loan application is included in the legal record as part of the settlement proceedings. That's not negotiable." She stood. "My attorney will reach out to yours this week." Trent looked at the envelope. He didn't pick it up. "I didn't know," he said quietly, "about any of it. The fund, the firm. I know you didn't." She picked up her glass of water. "That's the part you should think about. Not what I hid. Why I felt like I had to." She walked to the hallway. The luggage was already there. 3 bags, neat against the wall, the kind of quiet readiness that said she had packed them long before today. Maybe before the gala. Maybe before that. Trent looked at them from the couch and did not move. The front door opened, then it closed, and then Trent was alone in the house, sitting in the stillness of a room that had always been hers more than his, surrounded by the careful, modest life she had built around herself to keep him comfortable. The muted furniture, the bare counters, the closed laptop she carried with her everywhere. All of it exactly the same, and all of it, suddenly, plainly, not enough to fill the space she had just walked out of. 6 months later, the Ellison Holt Capital Foundation held its annual press event at the Meridian Arts Center, a wide, glass-fronted building where afternoon light came through the windows in long, clean rectangles and landed on the polished floors like something deliberate. Naomi stood near the center of the room, not at the edge, not tucked quietly beside someone more important. The center. She was wearing navy. Simple cut, no embroidery, nothing that cost more than a working lunch. She didn't need it to. The room already knew who she was. 5 young women sat in a loose half-circle near the east wall, each of them holding a notepad or a phone, or both, all of them somewhere between 22 and 26, all of them looking at Naomi the way people look at someone who has arrived somewhere they are still trying to get to. "The first thing they'll tell you," Naomi said, "is that you need to be louder, that you need to take up more space, announce yourself, make noise." She paused. "And sometimes that's true. But before you learn how to fill a room, you need to know what you actually carry into it." One of the young women, short hair, green blazer, pen already moving, looked up. "How do you figure that out?" "You stop performing for people who aren't paying attention anyway." Naomi said it plainly, without weight, like it was simple, like it had cost her nothing. "You figure out what's real and you protect it until you're ready to use it. The woman in the green blazer wrote something down. Naomi watched her write it, and something in her face, just briefly, was soft. Across town, in a converted office suite above a dry cleaner on Mercer Street, Trent was on a call with a contractor who was asking questions he didn't have clean answers to. His new firm had 4 employees, including himself. The website had gone live 3 months ago. The phone rang sometimes. He was fine. That was what he told people. He was regrouping, restructuring, exploring a different lane in the market. He used words like strategic pivot and portfolio recalibration in conversations with people who had the decency not to push back on them. His desk faced the window. The view was a parking structure and a partial slice of sky. He didn't go to industry events anymore. Vivian's new firm was in the financial district, on the 14th floor of a building that was respectable but not remarkable. Her title was Associate Analyst. She had taken the role because she had to, and she showed up every day because there was nothing else to do. She was good at the work. She had always been good at the work. That was the part nobody had ever doubted. She heard about the Ellison Holt Foundation event through a professional newsletter she still subscribed to. A small calendar item, 2 sentences. Naomi Ellison named as keynote speaker and foundation chair. She read it at her desk, sitting very still, then scrolled past it. She did not go. But she had read it twice before she scrolled. The reporter from Capital Quarterly was a woman in her late 30s with a calm face and a recorder she set on the table between them like a small, careful offering. "You've been majority shareholder for years," the reporter said, "but this is the first time you've stepped into public leadership of the foundation. Why now?" Naomi considered the question without rushing it. "I spent a long time believing that visibility invited vulnerability." She folded her hands loosely on the table. "My grandfather taught me to be discreet, and discretion served me well. But at some point, discretion becomes disappearing, and I wasn't willing to keep disappearing." "Was there a specific moment that changed that for you?" Naomi glanced toward the back of the room. It was a brief look, a second, maybe less, taking in the crowd, the windows, the light falling across the floor in those long, pale rectangles. The young women in the half-circle were talking among themselves now, green blazer still writing, another one laughing at something her neighbor had said. The room was full and warm, and completely unbothered by her presence in it. She turned back to the reporter. "There was a night," she said, "where I wore something that cost more than most people's houses." A small, unhurried smile. "People made a lot out of that. The dress, the entrance, the moment." She shook her head slightly. "But the dress was never the point. I didn't wear it to prove anything." She looked at the reporter directly, her voice quiet and certain and clear. "I wore it because I was finally ready to let the room see who I had always been." The reporter nodded, pen moving. Naomi settled back in her chair, easy and still, the way a person sits when they have nothing left to hide and no reason to apologize for it. The afternoon light came through the windows. It landed on her like it belonged there. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day!